So 2017 has been a remarkable year, mostly for all the horrible things that have happened. Let's do a quick recap. Theresa May made a host of promises, and one by one she proved that she was lying about every single one of them. One of the main ones that stick out to me is the general election. She said point blank there would be no snap election, and turns out, much to her dismay, she called a snap election. Honestly, I'm split on this because while I'm all for the Conservatives having less power, it does mean that they had to start a coalition with the DUP. Now, the DUP are anti-gay, they're anti-science, they're very ambiguous when it comes to climate change. The chair of their education is a guy who is completely convinced that the Earth is less than 10,000 years old. This is the guy who's meant to teach children, or rather, this is the guy who's meant to decide what children are taught. That should be alarm bells for everyone. We've had Boris Johnson stumbling around, and man, I tell you what, before this year, I used to think Boris Johnson was really funny. I really did. But then, blithering idiot that he is, managed to get an English national arrested and put in prison because he just couldn't keep his mouth shut. And it's not like it was a secret and she was on some secret mission to bring new journalism to the world. No, she went out to see her family. Absolutely no one ever even hinted at the fact that she could be a reporter, which she's not. But Boris Johnson seemed to think that she was, and because of his comments, she's spent Christmas in prison. Fantastic. Well done, Boris. Not only have you proven to the entire world that you are a racist dumbass, but now other people are suffering for you as well. But it doesn't just stop there. Jeremy Hunt, actually one of my pet peeves, the man who's meant to be protecting and building and servicing the NHS, has just gone out of his way to destroy it. In fact, this year he seems to be quite content with insulting junior doctors, calling them lazy and greedy, because weirdly enough, these people who we trust with our lives are saying that they can't really work 80, 90 hours a week and still be effective in their jobs. Amazing. Amazing. But apparently in Jeremy Hunt's mind, that is being lazy. I would say maybe Jeremy Hunt should do a job where he has to work more than 180 days a year. Or perhaps do one shift in a hospital to find out just how lazy junior doctors and the amazing people who work in our NHS actually are. I think he'd be stunned. On the same note, Stephen Hawking, one of the smartest men alive, has not only been so disgusted with Jeremy Hunt coming out earlier this year saying that if he was diagnosed with his condition today, he'd be a dead man, but is now actually suing Jeremy Hunt because he's just that incompetent. But while we're up there on my scumbag list of Conservatives, we have David Gauke. Now, this is a name who's not widely known, but I think that it should be. This is the guy who is in charge of the DWP, Department of Working Pensions. If you rely on any kind of benefits whatsoever, then this is the guy who ultimately lays down all of the decisions. Now, the last few years, if you've had to live on benefits, if you've had disabilities in any way, life's been getting much, much harder for you. And this year in particular, it got pretty bad. People who are suffering with terminal illnesses, people who are suffering from debilitating conditions like MS, MD, the list goes on, have received letters and mandates from DWP saying that they should stop being so lazy and that they need to find work. Yeah, there is no apology that can actually make that better. There's nothing he can say or do at this point other than resigning and letting an actual human being take over. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who signs on is 100% ill. Yes, of course, there are people who are faking it. However, the vast majority of people who are signing on benefits are signing on because they need to. It is not an easy life to sign on, whether it's living with a disability or whether you're just out of work. Nothing about that process is easy, and nothing about living on benefits is easy. I hated having to sign on. For years, it was horrible. And you know what? I would do any job I could find. Eventually, I got lucky, and then I started working in the sector that I'm in now. But it doesn't mean that I don't have a future where I'm not going to be jobless again. Particularly with the type of government that we have in office right now. This man, David Gork, is a horrible human being. There have been stories throughout the year where people have just been so stressed because of the pressures that him and his system has put on people that they've ended up taking their own lives. This man should not be forgiven. He should not be allowed to be in any position of power. Could be my scumbag of the year. Admittedly, while she's not at the top of my list of deplorables, she is fairly high, and that is our Prime Minister. Yes, Theresa May. Now, my biggest problem with Theresa May is that she's a sellout. She's a carbon cut copy sellout. Insert any word you want into that whole phrase, and you will have Theresa May. She's come out saying that just because a child doesn't have a home doesn't mean that they're homeless. Yes, it does. She keeps saying things like the Conservative government, her government, are the only government that could fix the growing homeless problem that the UK is facing. And it is a crisis that we are going through with, at the start of the year, the Guardian reported 307,000 homeless people. Honestly, I had to write that number down just because it was so shocking. Here's the thing. Conservatives have been in power for 7 years. And in all that time, homelessness has just gone up and up and up. And before we had the Conservatives, we had a Tory Labour, which really isn't much better than the Conservatives. But there's no improvement. Yes, some houses are being built, but taken from my own situation where I live, the house that I'm in now, when I moved into it, the guy who owns it paid £74,000 for it. Now, the house when I moved into it had no heating. It had floorboards that were turned up. It had been abandoned for years. It was a sorry state. But still, that was £74,000, which is still a pretty damn good price. It's also the only kind of reasonable price that a lot of the country can afford, because most of the country is on minimum wage. The houses that are being now, in fact, the houses that are being built at the other end of this town, are being sold for about $250,000 each. To purchase this house, the guy who owns it had to take out a massive loan and a big mortgage. There's no way these new £250,000 houses are actually going to help anyone other than politicians who are happy to subsidise taxpayer money to buy them a second, third, fourth home. Yeah. Tea break, because I'm not nearly done. Okay. We also have the cuts to education. There was a story a few weeks ago now, saying that a headmaster had called random students saying, don't come in because we haven't got the teachers. Now, this was a story done on GMTV. A school that calls the students and tells them not to come in because they haven't got staff. At what point do you understand there is a massive issue here? And it's not like Ivy League schools or private schools turn out the best people. No, they don't. They turn out muppets like Boris Johnson, an absolute, doing my best not to swear, but clearly someone who struggles with the basic concepts of life. There's no data that shows that private schools outperform public schools in any way. But it's only the private schools that seem to be getting the money. Having said that, I do kind of feel bad for Theresa May. I mean, not that much, but essentially no matter what happens, she's going to get the blame for Brexit. We've spent a year dicking about rather than actually cracking on with it and trying to get the best we can. So there's no way that the UK is going to get a good deal from leaving the European Union. And Theresa May is going to get blamed for that completely. So I don't see any Conservative Party member actually taking her spot before we leave the European Union. Certainly anyone who does is a bloody moron. But then you've got quite a lot of people in the Conservative Party like Boris Johnson. So who knows? It could actually happen. Now, on the same grounds of Brexit, that's another thing to be worried about. Now, look, if we had a competent government, then maybe I wouldn't be so concerned. But instead, we have a government who are constantly saying that they want to get rid of human rights. And in fact, just recently, Michael Gove tried to slip away and strip away a little bit of workers' rights. Yeah. And people keep telling me not to worry about the Tories taking away rights. Yeah, okay. Austerity has done nothing but grow, and yet we are constantly force-fed the notion that trickle-down economics is the only way that will help this country. That giving the top brass even more money is the only thing that's actually going to help, and that socialism is a failed idea and it never works. Why? I mean, hell, we've never actually tried it, so maybe we should. Certainly we have the studies now to show that no, trickle-down economics does not work. And if you give all the money to the wealthy, you get nothing but austerity and a growing depression, which is actually what we have now. It's all very well and good saying that there are now more people working than ever before, but in fact, very recently, the BBC covered a story where a man is, this guy's living in a tent on the street because he has a 0-hour contract and he can't afford a home. This guy is working and he can't afford a flat or a studio apartment because he's on a bloody 0-hour contract. But that counts as working. So Theresa May is taking that for the win. I suppose she's also ignoring the amount of families that are completely dependent on food banks and, well, everything else that her government has inflicted on us. But it's not all bad news. We do have a shining bit of hope. Now, during the enforced general election that she spectacularly lost, Jeremy Corbyn came out like a chuffing rock star, constantly being posted up as the socialists, and a lot of media outlets certainly are trying to smear him. In fact, mainstream media did a very good job of not mentioning at all the fact that he's won a peace prize. Like that's not a small thing to win. And yet, I kid you not, the other morning on BBC, they were doing a segment on how to cut cheese. Yeah. Not celebrating the Labour leaders outstanding accomplishment in getting this Peace Prize? No. How to cut different types of cheese, because that's more newsworthy, and God forbid anyone ever think about any kind of socialism. From Jeremy Corbyn here, there's a lot of feeling going around that if there was another general election held tomorrow, that Corbyn and Corbyn's Labour would win. I'm not entirely convinced of that, but I certainly bloody hope so. They've done their best this year to slate Jeremy Corbyn at every turn. Even Richard Branson on Virgin Trains has come out and bashed him. I mean, I used to like Richard Branson until I saw an interview with him and Russell Howard, where he said that he's not making any money by the NHS. You know, he's not making a penny on it. Unfortunately, he is making a penny on it, and not only has he made millions and millions of pounds from privatising the NHS, but he's also sued the bloody NHS. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that would put me off here. But back to Jeremy Corbyn. One of the many things that they've tried to slur him with is saying that he's a terrorist sympathiser. Now, why? Well, because for some weird reason he thinks that if you bomb terrorists, it won't actually get rid of terrorists. I mean, mental, right? Because, you know, there was a time when we did it, and no, it didn't work then. That didn't work. Oh, there was a time we dropped a bomb on. That backfired horribly and started the Second Gulf War. But it wasn't just the UK that was a shitstorm. Looking over to the other side of the pond, America elected Trump to be their president. Wow. And in his first few days, he showed what an incompetent, lying buffoon he really is by setting up an I can't say it without laughing. Setting up an investigation to prove that his crowd size was bigger than Obama's. But it really wasn't. So again, he's using taxpayers' money to prove that he's a liar. Fantastic. Brilliant. Well done, Trump. Just well done. And as the year went on, it got worse and worse and worse. Essentially, all he's done is try to undo everything that Obama put in place. And now I'm pretty sure he's just done away with the Healthcare Act that Obama put in place. Now, it's not a free healthcare like the UK has, but it helps. It helps a lot. But Trump doesn't like it, so he's taken it away from the people by not funding it. Yeah. I say Trump. Really all he's doing is taking the credit for it. He doesn't actually have the wherewithal to actually, sit down and write these things out, because this is what, the third, fourth attempt that he had to do it on. Got revealed before the election that he was a grotesque sexual predator on, well, in all fairness, I'd call him a rapist and a paedophile. But apparently, well, I could go on for quite a while about Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords. Something that really bugs me about the Paris Climate Accords, okay? If, for example, I run a country and I say I'm going to cut back emissions by 20%, and I don't do it, there's absolutely no ramifications whatsoever. So Trump's whole line of the climate accords don't benefit America is absolute bullshit, because there is no negative fallout if America doesn't meet their standards. Now, when I say there's no negative fallout, I mean there's no body of government that's actually going to punish them or reprimand them or do anything like that. The only cost is the environment, which we fucked. I was going to try my hardest not to swear in this video, but it's not working. Trump appears to be a climate change denier, yet he's very, very happy to build a massive wall around his property in Ireland because of climate change. So clearly when it affects him personally, he believes in it, but for everything else, no, doesn't care. He thinks coal is a clean energy. The man is a moron. Now, there's nothing wrong with just being a little bit dippy, unless, of course, you are in a major seat of power, which Trump is. It seems like he just wants war. He doesn't understand what a nuclear weapon does, so he's very, very quick to jump on the gun and threaten North Korea. If he drops a bomb on North Korea, not only is he going to murder a ton of innocent people that he doesn't care about, but he's also going to kill a load of people in South Korea. The fallout will most likely spread to China, will most likely spread to Japan. But he doesn't care about any of that because he is just so wrapped up in his own little bubble. He is a spiteful, vindictive little man baby. And nothing shows that more than his attitude towards Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico didn't vote for him in the general election, in the presidential election. So when they had a horrible, horrible natural catastrophe and needed help, what did Trump do? He did nothing for about 2 weeks, and then he turns up and throws a few paper towels, calls Puerto Ricans lazy, and then goes back to his golf resort in Mar-a-Lago. Not even the White House. No, he has spent the vast majority of his presidency on holiday, doing nothing. Yet he was one of the first people who criticized Obama for going out and playing golf. He's now played golf more times than Obama did in his entire presidency. And Trump has only done 11 months. Yeah, that's something special. But in addition to that, we also have this monumentally idiotic notion of moving his embassy, or moving the American embassy, to Jerusalem. Now, the ramifications and the fallouts for that, for everyone who doesn't understand, it's a powder cake. There are 3 religions that all state that Jerusalem is their sacred land. It's their sacred city. It's a holy city, and it belongs to God's chosen people. Now, my personal feelings on various religions notwithstanding, it's simply a city you don't want to take president in because it's a powder cake. There is no situation where you will win. But he decides that it should be the capital of Israel. Many people have already died because of this muppet and his failure of understanding. And even more than that, he then sends out his little lapdog to try and threaten the UN into saying everyone that doesn't agree with them will be written down and America will remember. Unfortunately, the rest of the world will remember as well. Donald Trump does not have a very high standing in Europe. There have been many protests every time we get a whiff of him coming to the UK. People just don't like him. And while there is a clear divide of people who would have him come to this country and then get him to explain himself, and people who just point blank don't want him here, he hasn't got the wherewithal to understand any of that. And the biggest problem is that his decisions aren't just affecting America. Now, the tax bill that he's put out is devastating to America. I honestly don't think America can recover from this if it goes on for so long. There's only so much you can actually undo when it comes to economic growth and economic stimulation. What he's done is, it's not even trickle-down economics. It's blatant robbery. It's the opposite of Robin Hood. Robin Hood would take from the tax man and give the money back to the people. Essentially, what Trump has done is taken from the people and given it to the rich in forms of tax breaks, which isn't going to help anyone other than the rich, which is going to lead to a massive recession, which I'm not entirely sure America can recover from. But all is not lost. The silver lining to all this is that we have been shown who the monsters are. So, whether you're in America or in the UK, pay attention to the local elections, the smaller elections. Focus on what these politicians are actually doing, and when they do something that doesn't represent the best interests of the people, call them out on it. Call them out constantly. Damn near every single politician is on Twitter. I mean, hell, the MP for Dover is Charlie Elfrick. Probably the only bit of good news we had this year is that Charlie Elfrick got thrown under the bus by his own party. Don't know why. Apparently he doesn't even know why. And, well, according to him, it ruined his Christmas. I mean, I would play the world's smallest violin, but I don't even think it deserves that, really. The amount of homeless we have on the street, and he's complaining that he had a bad Christmas because his party got shitty with him. Yeah, okay, alright. Again, a serious note. Pay attention to what these politicians are doing, and pay attention to what media outlets are actually reporting on and how they're reporting on it. Now, while there are many great journalists at the BBC, my biggest criticism is their attitude on reporting a story is, well, you know, they say this, but then that say that, and we don't know, because, you know, cutting cheese, that's a thing. When no, there's a very clear line. Now, it's not always clear, but when Theresa May comes out and says homelessness has fallen, and then you have studies from organisations like Shelter saying no, homelessness has not fallen, it's gotten worse, you can't come out with a central ground of they say this and they say that. No, the Prime Minister has lied. She has lied multiple times. She does not represent the people. She does not care about the people, and she's more interested in her own benefits than actually helping people who are homeless, who are suffering from PTSD, who are suffering from mental illnesses, which are putting them on the streets. The NHS is failing. The education system is failing. Transport. Everything is going to hell because she is allowing it to be sold off, to be defunded, and everything else. If you haven't got a politician in your local area who you think is worth their specs, become that politician, or find someone who's vaguely interested in politics and convince them to do it. We need to make a change, and in terms of the UK, I don't think we can wait for the next general election. The damage is being done right now. It's not just the government that's turning against us. We are losing the backing that we had from the European Union. I know a lot of people here are very skeptical of the EU and they don't like it, but you know what? We got a lot of protection from the EU, which we now don't get. I don't normally go in for the whole new year, new me debacle, and I don't really make New Year's resolutions. I will make one this year. I am going to try and keep on top of politics. I am going to try and keep this channel running. I did a few bits on my archery channel, but that's not really the proper platform for this type of conversation. So you can find my Twitter down below. Feel free to follow me there, follow me here, or if you're interested in archery, you can head on over to my archery channel. Links will be down below. I hope you had a very good Christmas. I hope you enjoyed whatever holiday you celebrate. and I hope you have a very good new year.